Hey guys! Tonight we are leaving the familiar world behind to wake up in a place without alarm clocks, without memory foam mattresses, and certainly without the luxury of a private bathroom. Imagine stirring from sleep, not to the gentle chimes of your phone, but to the earthy smell of damp wool, the grunt of a nearby pig, and the low collective murmur of 30 other people who all share your bedroom. We're going to spend a day and a year in the life of a Viking goatherd. Spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive the morning routine, which involves less worrying about your inbox and more about whether the goat you're about to milk is in a particularly foul mood today. It's a life both simpler and infinitely more challenging than our own. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always a huge encouragement. And as always, I love seeing where you're all listening from, so feel free to post your city or country and the local time in the comments below. It's a nice way to feel connected as we all unwind. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you register is not sight, but smell. It's a thick, complex bouquet that you, a resident of this 9th century Norse longhouse, can decode as easily as a modern person reads a newspaper. There's the foundational note of wood smoke, sharp and resinous, from the embers of the central hearth being coaxed back to life. Layered on top is the damp, lanolin-rich scent of wool blankets, the slightly sour tang of fermenting grain, and the unmistakable earthy musk of sleeping bodies, both human and animal. It's an aromatic blend of eau de dog, essence of ancestor, and the faint, ever-present perfume of something is definitely fermenting over there. You don't find it unpleasant. You find it normal. It's the smell of home. A sliver of pale pre-dawn light filters down from the smoke hole in the roof, illuminating a galaxy of dust motes and smoke particles dancing in the still air. It's not enough to see clearly, but it's enough to trace the familiar shapes around you. The long, cavernous hall stretches out in either direction, a single vast room that serves as kitchen, bedroom, workshop, and living room for your entire extended family. Your bed is a simple wooden platform built against the curved outer wall. There is no privacy here. Your personal space is about the size of a modern yoga mat, and you have to share it with your spouse, 2 sleeping children, and the occasional curious chicken that has wandered in from the animal stalls at the far end of the house. Your mattress is a rough-spun sack stuffed with straw and dried heather, which does a decent job of keeping the chill of the wooden planks at bay. It also does a decent job of housing a thriving community of fleas, but that's just roommate drama, Viking style. You've learned to ignore the occasional itch. You push aside the heavy wool blanket, its texture coarse against your skin, and the cold air immediately bites at your exposed arms. The fire provides warmth, but only to those huddled near it. Here on the periphery, the morning is cold and damp. You sit up, your joints stiff from the hard sleeping surface. You don't own pajamas. You, like most people, slept in your basic undergarment, a simple undyed linen tunic or kirtle. Now you reach for your day clothes, neatly folded beside you. A woolen overtunic, dyed a handsome, if faded, shade of brown using walnut husks. A pair of simple trousers, known as brackur, which are more like loose-fitting leggings. You hold them up with a leather belt, from which hangs your most essential tool, a small, sharp knife in a leather sheath. This knife is your all-purpose utensil, used for eating, carving, mending, and a dozen other daily tasks. On your feet, you pull on soft leather shoes, crafted from a single piece of hide and stitched with sinew. They are light and pliable, more like slippers than boots, molding perfectly to the shape of your feet. For extra warmth on the cold earth floor, you might take a moment to wrap your lower legs in long strips of wool cloth called winingas. It's a surprisingly effective bit of insulation. As your eyes adjust, the longhouse comes into focus. It's a masterpiece of architecture, really. A long, ship-like structure with bowed walls designed to withstand the fierce winds that sweep down from the mountains. The roof is supported by 2 rows of massive internal posts, leaving the floor plan completely open. At the far end, you can hear the lowing of a cow and the grunt of a pig in their stalls. Keeping the animals inside, especially during the colder months, was a very clever form of central heating. Their body heat helped keep the entire structure a few precious degrees warmer. Historians still argue whether the constant thick smoke inside these longhouses was a chronic health hazard leading to respiratory illnesses, or if the design, with its carefully placed smoke holes and gabled vents, created a surprisingly effective ventilation system that drew the worst of it out. For you, it's just the air you breathe. Across the central aisle, your mother is already moving by the fire, her silhouette framed by the orange glow. She's likely preparing the dogmal, the day meal. It won't be much. Probably a simple porridge of oats or barley, or perhaps some leftover bread from yesterday's baking. You won't have your main, heartier meal until the evening, after the day's work is done. You stand, stretching the sleep from your limbs, and make your way carefully over sleeping cousins and slumbering dogs towards the heavy wooden door. It's time to start your day. But first, a trip to the great outdoors is in order. You'll find a discreet spot, wash your face and hands with a splash of icy water from the rain barrel, and maybe chew on a frayed twig to clean your teeth. Then your true work begins. The goats are waiting. You slide the heavy wooden bar from its brackets and pull the plank door inward. The air that greets you is clean and sharp, smelling of pine needles, damp earth, and the nearby salt water of the fjord. It's a welcome contrast to the thick, smoky air of the longhouse. The sky is a soft, bruised purple, not yet fully light, and a low mist clings to the ground, muffling the world in a blanket of quiet. You see the animal pen, a simple fenced enclosure attached to the longhouse, where your small flock of goats is already stirring, their bleats cutting through the morning stillness. They know the routine as well as you do. These are not the large, placid dairy goats of modern farms. Your goats are a hardy, ancient breed, compact and shaggy, with sly, intelligent eyes and a stubborn streak a mile wide. They are your family's wealth, a living, breathing bank account that provides milk, cheese, meat, and hides. Each one has a name and a distinct personality, from old Frida, the calm matriarch of the herd, to young Loki, a troublemaker who is constantly testing the integrity of the wattle fence. You grab a small 3-legged stool, a marvel of functional design, stable on any uneven ground, and a wide, shallow wooden pail that has been scrubbed clean with sand and rinsed. You unlatch the gate and step inside the pen. The goats crowd around you, some nudging your hand for a scratch behind the ears, others simply eyeing you with an air of detached appraisal. You make your way to Frida first. She's the easiest. You murmur a few soft, reassuring words as you settle onto your stool beside her. There's a quiet, almost magical belief that the mood of the milker passes into the milk itself. A calm hand and a soft voice yield sweeter cheese. It might just be a superstition, but it also happens to be excellent animal husbandry. You lean your head against her warm, bristly flank, the familiar goaty smell filling your senses. Your hands, calloused but nimble, find their familiar rhythm. Squeeze, pull, release. Squeeze, pull, release. The first streams of milk ring against the bottom of the wooden pail with a sharp ping, a sound that gradually softens to a gentle, frothy hiss as the pail fills. Steam rises from the warm milk, coiling like a spirit in the cold morning air. This is a moment of pure, repetitive focus. Your mind is quiet, your attention fixed on this simple, vital task. You are not thinking about the past or the future. You are simply here, in the cool dawn, with the rhythmic sounds and the warmth of the animal beside you. It's a form of meditation, really, one practiced by your ancestors for generations. After Frida, you move on to the others, each milking a small negotiation with the goat's particular temperament. When the pails are full, you carefully carry the still warm, frothy milk back into the longhouse. The main room is more active now. The fire is crackling merrily, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and the sounds of conversation and children's laughter have replaced the silence of the dawn. You nod to your mother, who is now grinding grain on a rotary quern, two heavy circular stones that require considerable effort to turn. Your workstation is a designated spot on the long earthen bench near the hearth. Here you begin the slow, careful alchemy of turning liquid milk into solid, long-lasting sustenance. Dairy was the cornerstone of the Norse diet. While sagas are filled with tales of feasting on roasted boar, the reality for most people was a diet heavily reliant on what the animals could provide daily. Fresh milk was a treat, but it wouldn't last. The real prize was cheese and skyr. Scholars still debate how common lactose tolerance truly was in the Viking Age. It's likely many adults couldn't digest fresh milk easily, which made these fermented products, with their lower lactose content, absolutely essential. For cheese, the process starts with gentle heat. You pour some of the milk into a clay pot and set it near, but not directly, in the fire. You want it just warm to the touch. Too hot, and you'll ruin it. Then comes the magic ingredient, rennet. You have a small, dried piece of it, carefully wrapped in a cloth. It's the lining of a young calf's stomach, and it contains enzymes that cause milk to curdle and separate. It's a strange and miraculous substance, and you use it sparingly. A tiny sliver is all you need. You drop it into the warmed milk and give it a slow stir with a wooden spoon. Then you wait. Patience is the most important tool in your kitchen. While the cheese-making milk is resting, you turn your attention to the rest of the milk, which will become skyr. This yogurt-like food is a staple, a tangy, protein-rich food that can be eaten plain, mixed with berries, or thinned with water for a refreshing drink. The process is similar, but instead of rennet, you add a spoonful of skyr from the last batch. It's a living culture, a culinary heirloom passed down through generations. It's the Viking equivalent of a sourdough starter, and just as jealously guarded. You cover the pot and leave it in a warm spot to let the cultures do their work. After an hour or so, you check on your cheese pot. The milk has transformed. It has separated into thick white curds and a thin, watery greenish liquid called whey. Nothing is wasted here. The whey is a valuable byproduct. It's nutritious, slightly sour, and will be drunk later or perhaps used for pickling or as the liquid for boiling grains. You ladle the curds into a coarse woven linen bag and hang it from one of the roof beams, placing a bowl underneath to catch the dripping whey. Over the next few hours, gravity will do its work, draining the liquid and compacting the curds into a soft, fresh cheese. This cheese can be eaten as is, or it can be salted and pressed into a mold to be aged for a harder, longer-lasting cheese that will see you through the lean months of winter. For now, your morning's work is done. You have provided for your family, transforming the morning's fleeting gift into something that will endure. With the milk processed and the simple morning meal of porridge finished, the real work of your day as a goatherd begins. The small, fenced pasture by the longhouse is not enough to sustain your flock. The goats, with their voracious appetites, would strip it bare in a matter of days. You must take them to the satyr, the high summer pastures in the fells and mountainsides that overlook your fjordside home. This practice, known as transhumance, is an ancient and essential rhythm of life in this rugged landscape. It allows the lowland meadows to be saved for growing hay, a precious winter resource, while the animals feast on the rich, wild vegetation of the highlands. You call out to your herd with a series of sharp, familiar whistles and clicks. They know the sound. It means adventure, or at least a change of scenery. You also have a partner in this endeavor, a scruffy, intelligent dog of no particular breed, but of immense value. He's a Norse sheepdog, a forerunner of breeds like the Icelandic sheepdog, and he is a master of his craft. He circles the herd, nipping at the heels of stragglers and keeping the more adventurous youngsters from bolting. His work allows you to be the guide, not the wrangler. The journey begins. You lead the way, a long walking staff in hand. It's more than just a walking aid. It's a versatile tool used for balance on treacherous paths, for probing uncertain ground, and for gently prodding a stubborn goat back into line. You leave the cluster of longhouses that make up your small village, following a path that quickly begins to climb. The air grows cooler and cleaner with every step. The path is not a smooth, graded trail. It's a narrow, rocky track, worn into the earth by generations of hooves and feet. It winds through a sparse forest of birch and pine, their roots clinging to the thin soil like gnarled fingers. You are acutely aware of your surroundings. Your senses are tuned to the subtle language of the wilderness. You notice the patch of moss that indicates a hidden spring, a safe place to drink. You see the deep scratches on a tree trunk and know a bear has passed this way recently. You hear the sharp, scolding cry of a raven and scan the sky, wondering what has earned its ire. This is not a passive walk in the park. The wilderness here is full of what your people call Vaitir, spirits of the land. Some are benevolent, but others are mischievous or outright dangerous. A sudden rockfall, a flash flood in a narrow ravine, getting lost in a sudden fog, all these natural hazards are understood as the actions of unseen forces that must be respected. Historians often see this as a way of personifying the very real and unpredictable dangers of the Norse environment. For you, it's just common sense to be cautious. Your goats are natural mountaineers, leaping from rock to rock with an unnerving agility. You, in your soft leather shoes, have to be more careful. You learn to read the terrain, placing your feet with deliberate care, using the texture of the rock and the give of the soil to secure your footing. It's a full-body workout. Your legs burn with the constant descent, and your lungs work to draw breath in the thinning air. After an hour of climbing, you break through the tree line. The world opens up. Below you, the fjord is a ribbon of deep blue, cradled by steep, green-sloped mountains. Your longhouse is now just a tiny speck, a puff of smoke in the vast landscape. Up here, the vegetation changes. The trees give way to a rolling tapestry of tough grasses, resilient wildflowers, and low-lying shrubs like heather and juniper. This is what the goats have been waiting for. They spread out, their bells creating a gentle, clinking music that echoes across the fells as they begin to graze. This high pasture is a lonely place, but you are not lonely. You have the company of your dog, the goats, and the immense, silent presence of the mountains. There is a profound sense of peace here, a quiet that is deeper than mere absence of sound. It's a quiet filled with the hum of insects, the whisper of wind through the grass, and the distant cry of a hawk circling high above. You find a comfortable perch on a sun-warmed boulder, a vantage point from which you can keep an eye on the entire herd as it spreads across the hillside. From here, you can see for miles in every direction. There's a strange and little-known quirk of Viking-age property law. While the lowland farms were fiercely private property, these high summer pastures were often considered communal land, used by all families from the nearby settlement. It required a degree of cooperation and trust, a shared understanding of not overgrazing any one area. Your family's claim to this patch of hillside is based on tradition and use, not on a deed or a fence. It's a fragile but functional system, held together by the bonds of community. Your job is not just to watch the goats, but to be a guardian of this delicate balance. As the sun climbs towards its zenith, a familiar pang of hunger reminds you that it's time for your midday meal. There are no scheduled lunch breaks in the 9th century. You eat when the work allows, and your stomach demands. Your provisions for the day are simple, practical, and designed for portability. You reach into the small leather pouch you carry slung over your shoulder. Inside, wrapped in a piece of clean linen, is your lunch. The centerpiece is bread. This isn't the light, airy loaf you might imagine. It's a dense, heavy flatbread made from barley or rye flour, sometimes with ground peas or beans mixed in to stretch the grain. It's unleavened and cooked on a hot stone or iron griddle over the fire, resulting in a tough, chewy texture. It's incredibly hardy and travels well, resisting mold for a surprisingly long time. It's not delicious in a modern sense, but it is deeply satisfying, a solid source of energy for a body hard at work. It's fuel. Alongside the bread, you have a small wedge of the fresh cheese you helped make just a few days ago. It's soft and slightly salty, a perfect complement to the bland, hearty bread. This combination of bread and cheese is the quintessential traveler's meal, a lunchbox staple for farmers, merchants, and sailors across the Viking world. It's the ancient equivalent of a ham and cheese sandwich, minus the ham, and the fluffy bread, and the mustard. Okay, it's not very much like a ham and cheese sandwich at all, but the principle is the same. You use your all-purpose knife to saw off a piece of the bread and slice a sliver of cheese. But the meal isn't complete yet. You are sitting in the middle of nature's pantry, and you are an expert forager. Your eyes, trained since childhood, scan the landscape around your sun-warmed rock. Over there, a patch of wild bilberries, small, dark, and intensely flavorful. You spend a few minutes gathering a handful, their sweet, tart juice staining your fingers purple. A little further on, you spot the tender green leaves of wild sorrel growing near a patch of damp ground. You pick a few leaves and chew on them. Their sharp, lemony tang is a refreshing burst of flavor that cuts through the richness of the cheese. This is a critical skill. Knowing the local flora, what is edible, what is medicinal, and what is poisonous, is as important as knowing how to milk a goat or mend a fence. Your knowledge is a library of tastes, textures, and seasons, passed down from your parents and grandparents. You know that the roots of a certain plant can be boiled to make a starchy paste, that the leaves of another can soothe an insect bite, and that the pretty red berries on that particular shrub will give you a stomach ache you'll never forget. This is a subtle, unwritten science, a deep and intimate relationship with the land. Mainstream history often focuses on the grand narratives of kings and battles, but for most people, history was written in the soil and the seasons. You might also find some wild thyme or juniper berries to chew on, their aromatic flavors cleansing your palate. To drink, you have a small water skin filled with whey from this morning's cheesemaking. It's cool, tangy, and surprisingly thirst-quenching. Or you might just walk over to the small, clear stream that trickles down the mountainside, its water icy cold and tasting of stone and moss. You cup your hands and drink deeply. While you eat, your dog sits patiently at your feet, hoping for a stray crumb of bread to fall his way. You toss him a small piece, a reward for his good work. The goats continue their placid grazing, their bells providing a gentle, rhythmic soundtrack to your meal. There is no rush. This quiet, solitary lunch is a moment of respite, a time to rest your legs and replenish your energy. Historians still argue about the exact nutritional makeup of the average Norse diet. Analysis of skeletal remains can tell us a lot about general health, diseases, and chronic deficiencies, but it can't tell us the specifics of a meal eaten on a Tuesday in July. Did you get enough vitamins? Was your diet varied enough? The popular image of Vikings as exclusively mead-swilling carnivores is a dramatic oversimplification. For you, a simple goat herd, your diet is overwhelmingly local and seasonal. It's dairy, grains, and whatever the land provides. Meat is a rarity, reserved for feasts, festivals, or the necessary culling of the herd before winter. Your quiet, foraged lunch on the mountainside is far more representative of daily life than a grand feast in a chieftain's hall. It's a meal born of necessity, skill, and a deep connection to the world around you. And right now, under the vast sky, with the taste of wild berries on your tongue, it feels like a feast in its own right. With your simple lunch finished, the long, slow afternoon stretches out before you. The goats are content, spread across the hillside in a loose constellation of grazing bodies. Your dog has found a patch of cool earth in the shade of a juniper bush and is dozing, one ear occasionally twitching at the sound of a distant bird. This is the quietest part of your day. The hard work of the morning is done, and the journey home is still a few hours away. Now you have time. But this is not idle time in the modern sense. There is no doom scrolling, no binge watching, no refreshing of feeds. Your mind and hands are rarely still. To be idle is to be unproductive, and in a world where your survival depends on constant effort, productivity is deeply ingrained in your psyche. So, you reach into your leather pouch again and pull out your afternoon's project, a half-finished carving. It's a piece of driftwood you found on the shore of the fjord a few weeks ago. Its shape was suggestive, twisted and smoothed by the water into a form that reminded you of a serpent or a sea monster. Using your small, sharp utility knife, the same one you used for your bread and cheese, you are slowly bringing that shape to life. The work is meticulous and requires immense concentration. You shave off thin curls of pale wood, your thumb braced against the piece, guiding the blade with practiced ease. You are not carving a specific, legendary beast like Jormungandr, the world serpent. Instead, you are carving in the style of your people, a flowing, interlaced pattern of knots and animal forms that is instantly recognizable as Norse. This is not high art destined for a museum. It's a form of active meditation, a way to occupy your hands and focus your mind while your senses remain alert to the world around you. You might be carving a simple tool, like a spoon, or a toggle for a cloak. You might be making a toy for one of your children, a small wooden horse, or a boat. Or you might just be carving for the sheer pleasure of it, creating a beautiful object with no purpose other than to be beautiful. This impulse to decorate everyday objects, from wooden chests to sword hilts to simple spoons, is a defining characteristic of Viking Age art. It suggests a culture that valued beauty and craftsmanship even in the most mundane aspects of life. It's a quiet rebellion against a harsh and often drab existence. As you carve, your mind is free to wander. You think about the health of the herd, the coming change of seasons, a story you heard by the fire last night. This solitude is not isolating. It's a necessary part of your mental landscape. It's in these quiet hours on the mountainside that you process the events of your life, make plans, and simply be. After a while, you set the carving aside and reach for another object from your pouch, a simple flute. It might be carved from the wing bone of a large bird, like a swan, or perhaps from a hollow piece of elder wood. It has a few finger holes, and the range of notes it can produce is limited, but in your hands, it's enough. You bring it to your lips and play a simple, haunting melody. It's not a complex symphony. It's a folk tune, a melody that has been passed down through your family, changing slightly with each generation. The tune is melancholic and slow, echoing the vast, lonely beauty of the landscape around you. The sound carries on the wind, a thin, reedy thread of music weaving through the silence of the fells. Your dog's ears prick up, and a few of the nearby goats lift their heads, their jaws momentarily ceasing their rhythmic chewing. The existence of such instruments is a fascinating and often overlooked aspect of daily life. Archaeologists have found numerous examples of these bone flutes, or beinfluite, at Viking Age sites. They are a tangible link to the soundscape of the past. While the sagas are full of the grand poetry of the skalds, this simple flute music was the everyday soundtrack for ordinary people. It was the music of the fields, the pastures, and the long winter nights. It was music for oneself, not for an audience. You play for a while, improvising on the familiar theme, letting the notes rise and fall like the rolling hills around you. It's a conversation with the landscape, a way of expressing the feelings that have no words. When you finish, the silence that returns feels deeper, more profound. You tuck the flute safely back into its pouch. The sun has begun its slow descent towards the western mountains, and the shadows are starting to lengthen. The air is taking on a cooler edge. It will soon be time to gather the herd and begin the journey home. Your quiet, contemplative afternoon is drawing to a close, a necessary pause in the rhythm of your demanding life. You've had a few hours of peace, a bit of craft, a little music. For a Viking goatherd, that's a pretty good day at the office. Just as you begin to feel the familiar rhythm of the descending sun prompting you to start gathering the herd, a flicker of movement on the trail below catches your eye. It's not an animal, it's a person, moving with the steady, plodding gait of a long-distance traveler. This is an unusual sight. Your high pasture is remote, and while the lands are communal, you rarely encounter anyone other than your own kin during these summer sojourns. Your dog, ever vigilant, has noticed too. He stands, a low growl rumbling in his chest, but he doesn't bark. He waits for your command. You place a calming hand on his head and watch the approaching figure. As they draw closer, you see they are leading a single, heavily laden pony. This is no warrior or raider. This is a merchant, a kaupmader. You can tell by the practical, well-worn clothing, the sturdy leather boots, and the unmistakable bulk of the pack strapped to the pony's back. These traveling traders were the lifeblood of the Viking world, the threads that connected your small, isolated community to the wider network of trade and information. They were a common enough sight down in the settlement by the fjord, but it was rare for one to take a detour this high into the fells. The merchant spots you and your flock and raises a hand in a gesture of peace. You stand and return the gesture. In this world, any stranger is a potential threat, but they are also a potential source of news, goods, and stories. Hospitality is a sacred duty, but caution is a survival skill. The man guides his pony up the final stretch of the path and stops a respectful distance away. He is older, with a weather-beaten face and a shrewd, tired look in his eyes. "Good day to you, goatherd," he calls out, his voice raspy. "A fine flock you have. They look healthy." "They are," I reply, my tone neutral. "It's a good year for grazing. You're a long way from the main track." "That I am," he says, patting his pony's neck. "I heard talk down at the landing that a new family had settled up the North Valley. Thought I might see what they have to trade before I move on. Save me a trip next season." This is your opening. News. You haven't been down to the main settlement in days, and this man has likely come from a major trading hub like Kaupang or even Hedeby. He is a walking, talking newspaper. You invite him to sit and rest for a moment, offering him a drink of water from your stream. He gratefully accepts, slumping down on a rock and wiping his brow. As his pony grazes on a patch of lush grass, the questions begin. You ask about the price of walrus ivory in the south, about the raids on the coast of Francia you'd heard whispers of last winter, about the health of the king or the local jarl. In return, he asks about your community. How was the winter? Is the fishing good this year? Does your chieftain have a taste for Frankish wine? This exchange of information is as valuable as any physical goods. It's how you know if it's a good time to sell your surplus wool, or if there's a sickness spreading in the next fjord over. After the news has been thoroughly exchanged, the merchant, ever the businessman, gestures to his packs. "I don't suppose you have anything to trade up here? A well-carved spoon, perhaps? A good soft hide?" You shake your head. "Only what I need. But what do you carry that might interest a simple goatherd. He smiles, a knowing glint in his eye. He knows that even a simple goatherd has needs and desires. He unstraps one of his smaller bundles and unrolls a piece of cloth. The contents seem almost magical in this rustic, muted landscape. There are small, polished glass beads from the Rhineland, shimmering with color. A tiny, intricate bronze brooch in the Irish style. A handful of whetstones from the mountains of Telemark, famed for their superior quality for sharpening knives. And most dazzling of all, a small pile of silver coins, mostly Arabic dirhams, fragmented and worn, valued not for their face value, but for their weight in pure silver. This is the famous Viking Age global economy, laid out on a piece of wool on a Norwegian mountainside. There's a common misconception that all Vikings used coins. In reality, most of your local economy is based on barter and trade. You trade cheese for fish, wool for iron. But for luxury goods and dealings with outsiders, silver was the standard. It was measured in weight on small, portable scales that every merchant carried. A single gleaming glass bead could be worth a surprising amount of cheese or homespun cloth. You don't have much to offer, but you remember something. You pull out the small serpent-headed carving you were working on. It's not quite finished, but the craftsmanship is good. The merchant picks it up, turning it over in his hands, his expert eye judging the quality of the work. It's a fine piece, he admits. Good flow to the lines. He looks from the carving to his wares, calculating. I'll give you a whetstone for it, a good one. It will keep that knife of yours sharp for a year. It's a fair trade. Your knife is your most important tool, and a good whetstone is a valuable asset. You agree. The transaction is made, your small piece of art for his practical tool. You both feel you've gotten the better end of the deal. The merchant, rested and with a new trinket to sell at his next stop, bids you farewell and continues on his way. Your quiet, solitary day has been punctuated by a rare and welcome connection to the great bustling world that exists beyond your mountain pasture. The encounter with the merchant has left a subtle shift in the air, a reminder of the wider world. But as the sun's light turns from gold to a soft, rosy orange, your focus returns entirely to the immediate and pressing task at hand, getting your flock home before full dark. The mountainside, so peaceful and welcoming in the daylight, becomes a different place at dusk. The shadows lengthen and deepen, playing tricks on the eye. Familiar rocks take on the shapes of crouching beasts. The wind whispering through the ravines begins to sound like voices. This is the time when the hidden folk, the huldefolk, are said to be most active. Whether you literally believe in trolls and spirits is less important than the practical wisdom this folklore contains. Dusk is a dangerous time. The fading light makes the already treacherous paths even more difficult to navigate. A misstep could mean a twisted ankle or a dangerous fall. A goat could wander off into a ravine and be lost. The superstition is a story you tell yourself to enforce a very real and necessary caution. It's a safety memo from your ancestors wrapped in a supernatural cloak. You stand up and give a long, piercing whistle, a signal that cuts through the evening air. Your dog, already alert, springs into action. He is no longer the lazy, sun-drowsing creature of the afternoon. He is a focused professional. He begins to circle the widely scattered herd, his movements economical and precise. He runs in wide arcs, using his body and his intense wolf-like stare to nudge the goats back together. He doesn't bark needlessly. A sharp yip is enough to turn astray, a low growl to dissuade a stubborn elder from finishing one last mouthful of heather. You watch the process, your staff in hand, positioned at the head of the trail. The goats, knowing the routine, begin to move. They flow like a current down the hillside, their hooves dislodging small pebbles that skitter down the slope. Their bells, which were a gentle random melody during the day, now combine into a more urgent directional chime, a moving soundscape that tells you where the herd is and how fast it's traveling. Now your own skills as a mountaineer are put to the test. Going down is, in many ways, more difficult than coming up. It puts a different strain on your muscles and requires a greater degree of balance. You lead the way, your eyes constantly scanning the path ahead, choosing the safest route. You move with a sort of shuffling, controlled descent, letting your knees absorb the impact, your staff providing a third point of contact with the ground. You know every twist and turn of this path, every loose rock, every slippery patch of moss. As you descend back into the tree line, the darkness deepens significantly. The forest canopy blots out the remaining light from the sky. Here, your ears become as important as your eyes. You listen to the sound of the flock behind you, the clatter of hooves, the bleating of the younger kids, the rustle of leaves. A change in the rhythm could signal a problem, a goat that has fallen behind or taken a wrong turn. You trust your dog implicitly. He is your rear guard, ensuring no one is left behind. There is a scholarly debate about the precise nature of the relationship between Vikings and their dogs. Were they treated as mere tools, or were they cherished companions? Skeletons of dogs are often found in the graves of their owners, suggesting a deep bond that was expected to continue into the afterlife. Looking back at your tireless, intelligent partner working in the gloaming, you have no doubt. This dog is not a tool. He is family. He is a colleague whose skill and bravery you depend on every single day. You pass the gnarled tree that you know marks the halfway point. The air is growing warmer and thicker, carrying the familiar smells of your settlement. Wood smoke, the sea, the animals in their pens. These scents are a comfort, a sign that you are nearing the safety and warmth of home. The last stretch of the trail is the steepest, a winding track that cuts back and forth across the face of the hill. You take it slowly, carefully, calling out reassurances to the animals behind you. Finally, you emerge from the woods into the clearing where your longhouse stands. A warm yellow light spills from the open doorway, a welcoming beacon in the twilight. The sound of your approaching flock has been heard, and one of your siblings comes out to help you guide the animals into their nighttime enclosure. The dog gives one last satisfying circle of the pen, pushing the final stragglers through the gate before trotting over to you, his tail giving a few tired but proud thumps against your leg. You ruffle his fur and murmur your thanks. You slide the heavy wooden latch into place on the gate, securing the flock for the night. You take a moment to lean against the fence, your muscles aching, your body tired but satisfied. You have successfully guided your family's wealth, your living, bleating, stubborn capital, through the perils of the wilderness and back to safety. The day's main work is over. Now the rewards of the evening await. the warmth of the fire, a hot meal, and the company of your kin. Stepping from the deep twilight into the longhouse is like entering another world. The interior is alive with light and sound and warmth, a stark contrast to the cool, quiet emptiness of the fells. The central long fire, now built up for the evening, crackles and spits, sending tall flames licking toward the smoke hole in the roof. The light dances across the faces of your family and throws huge, moving shadows against the curved wooden walls. The air is thick with the savory smell of stew, the comforting aroma of baking bread, and the ever-present smoky atmosphere of the hall. After a day in the clean, thin air of the mountains, it feels almost suffocating for a moment. But it's the smell of security. It's the smell of evening. The longhouse is at its most crowded and most vibrant at this hour. Everyone is home from their day's work. Your father and older brothers have returned from fishing on the fjord, their nets hanging outside to dry. Your mother and aunts are tending to the cooking, their movements efficient and practiced around the hearth. Children, their chores for the day complete, chase each other through the rushes on the floor, their high-pitched laughter mixing with the low hum of adult conversation. The evening meal, the nachtmahl, is the most important social event of the day. You find your usual spot on the bench that runs along the wall, the same bench that serves as your bed. You slump down, the fatigue of the day settling deep into your bones. Someone passes you a wooden bowl of water and a rough-spun cloth to wash the trail dust from your hands and face. There are no individual dining tables. The whole family eats together, gathered on the benches, with the fire as the central focus. You balance your bowl on your lap. The meal itself is simple but hearty. Tonight it's a thick stew of root vegetables, turnips, carrots, and onions from the small kitchen garden, thickened with barley. Floating in the stew are precious chunks of salted fish, providing a welcome burst of flavor and protein. Alongside the stew, there are pieces of the same kind of flatbread you had for lunch, but this time it's warm and soft, fresh from the griddle. You eat with a spoon carved from horn or wood, and use your personal knife to cut the tougher pieces of fish. To drink, there is a choice of water, the tangy whey you know so well, or a weak, small-batch ale. Strong ale and mead were luxury items, typically reserved for feasts and special occasions, not for a regular weekday dinner. This is a quiet, nourishing, everyday meal. The conversation is a low burble around you. People share the small events of their day, a tool that broke and needs mending, a strange tide on the fjord, a funny thing a child said. It's how the family stays connected, how information is shared and problems are solved collectively. As you eat, you recount your encounter with the traveling merchant, presenting the new whetstone for your father to inspect. He grunts in approval, a fine piece of stone. You share the news the merchant brought from the south, which is listened to with great interest. Your small story is woven into the larger tapestry of the family's day. After the bowls are scraped clean, the mood in the longhouse shifts. The children are shushed and settled. The dogs lie sleeping by the fire, and the adults lean back, their bellies full. This is the time for stories. In a world without books, television, or internet, oral tradition is everything. It is entertainment, education, and cultural memory all rolled into one. Your grandfather, his face a roadmap of wrinkles illuminated by the firelight, might clear his throat and begin a story he heard from his grandfather. It might be a local tale, a ghost story about a nearby burial mound, or it could be a retelling of a famous legend, a story about the cunning of Odin or the mighty strength of Thor. The tale of Thor losing his hammer, Mjolnir, and having to dress up as the goddess Freya to get it back is a particular favorite. It's a genuinely funny story, a bit of divine slapstick that never fails to get a laugh. This blend of the epic and the comedic is a hallmark of Norse mythology. Their gods were not distant, perfect beings. They were flawed, relatable characters who made mistakes and were often the butt of the joke. You listen, completely captivated. The storyteller uses his voice, his hands, his whole body to bring the tale to life. The firelight flickers, making the shadows dance and creating a perfect, intimate theater. This is how you learn about your gods, your ancestors, and your own identity. You learn what is valued: courage, cleverness, loyalty, and a grim sense of humor in the face of hardship. Historians still argue about the literacy rates in the Viking Age. While some people, particularly chieftains and merchants, could read and write runes for practical purposes, like marking property or carving memorials, mass literacy was non-existent. The primary mode of cultural transmission was sound and memory, passed from one person to another in moments just like this, by the warmth of a fire on a long, dark night. As the story winds to a close, a comfortable silence settles over the longhouse, a shared feeling of contentment and belonging. The day is well and truly over. A few weeks later, the rhythm of your daily life is interrupted by an event of great importance to the community, the local Thing assembly. This is not a spontaneous gathering, but a scheduled meeting, a cornerstone of Norse society that sets it apart from many of its European contemporaries. It is the law and the government, not embodied by a distant king, but by the free people of the district, gathered in the open air to settle disputes, pass judgments, and make collective decisions. Your family will be attending, and while you are not a chieftain or a powerful landowner, your presence matters. The journey to the Thingstead, the designated meeting place, is an event in itself. You don't take the goats with you today. They are left in the care of the younger children who are not yet old enough to attend. Instead, you travel with your father and uncles. The site is a few miles away, a large open field marked by a great oak tree or a circle of standing stones. It's a place that feels significant, imbued with the weight of generations of legal precedent. As you walk, you join other families from neighboring farms and valleys, all heading in the same direction. The paths are more crowded than usual, and the mood is a mixture of solemnity and social excitement. It's a court date and a county fair rolled into one. When you arrive, the scene is bustling. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of people are gathered. There are temporary stalls set up where merchants, perhaps even the same one you met on the fell, are selling goods. People are trading news, catching up with distant relatives, and arranging marriages. The Thing is a legal institution, but it's also a vital social hub, a chance to reinforce the bonds of the wider community beyond your own small settlement. You see friends you haven't seen since the last assembly, and you spend some time exchanging gossip and pleasantries. Then a horn sounds, and the mood shifts. The crowd gathers around the central space, and the formal proceedings begin. The leader of the assembly is the law speaker, or Lagsugumadiar, a respected figure elected for his deep knowledge of the traditional laws. It's a remarkably difficult job. He is required to have memorized the entire legal code of the region and recite 1/3 of it at each annual assembly to ensure the law remains a living, spoken tradition. This feat of memory is staggering, a testament to the power of oral culture. Historians marvel at this system, which placed the law not in a dusty book accessible only to a literate elite, but in the memory of a trusted community member publicly accessible to all who attended. You stand at the edge of the crowd and listen as the cases are brought forward. The disputes are a reflection of the things that matter most in this society: land, livestock, and honor. One farmer accuses another of moving a boundary stone to steal a piece of his hay meadow. Another case involves a dispute over an inheritance. A more serious charge is brought against a man for slander, for speaking words that damaged another man's reputation. In your world, a person's honor and reputation, their draima, are their most valuable assets, and insults are taken as seriously as physical theft. The process is surprisingly formal. The plaintiff stands and states their case, calling witnesses to support their claim. The defendant then has a chance to respond, calling their own witnesses. There are no lawyers in the modern sense. Each person must speak for themselves, though they might be advised by a relative more skilled in legal matters. The free men of the assembly, your father and uncles among them, act as the jury. They listen to the evidence, murmur amongst themselves, and consider the arguments. One of the most peculiar and debated aspects of Norse law being discussed today is a case of animal on human injury. A pig belonging to one farmer has gored the leg of a neighbor. The injured party is not suing the pig's owner for damages in a modern sense. He is bringing a case against the pig itself. This might seem absurd, but the legal framework sometimes allowed for animals to be held responsible for their actions. The judgment might be that the pig is to be exiled or executed. This reflects a different understanding of agency and responsibility, one that is deeply strange to a modern observer, but made a certain kind of sense within their worldview. After all the evidence has been presented, the law speaker might clarify a point of law, but the decision rests with the men of the thing. A verdict is reached, often through consensus or a vote. The penalty is decided, usually a fine, paid in silver, or goods like cattle or wool. The fines are meticulously detailed in the law codes. So much for an insult, so much for a stolen sheep, so much for a broken arm. The goal is not just punishment, but restitution, a way to restore balance to the community and avoid the destructive cycle of a blood feud. For the most serious crimes, like murder or oath-breaking, the sentence could be outlawry. The guilty party would be declared a skogarmadar, a forest man, stripped of all legal protection. Anyone could kill them without penalty, and their property would be forfeit. It was a sentence considered worse than death. You watch the proceedings with rapt attention. This is your civics lesson. This is where you learn how your society functions, how conflicts are resolved, and what is considered just. You see that the law is not an abstract concept handed down from on high. It is a living, breathing thing, negotiated and upheld by the community itself. As the thing concludes and the crowd begins to disperse, you feel a sense of stability. Your world may be harsh and unpredictable, but it is not lawless. There are rules, and there is a place where every free person has a voice. The Thing assembly feels like a distant memory now, as the signs of the changing season become impossible to ignore. The sun's arc across the sky is lower and shorter each day. The vibrant greens of the high pastures have faded to shades of yellow and rust. A sharp, crisp edge has crept into the morning air, and the first frosts have begun to silver the grass at dawn. Autumn has arrived, and with it comes a sense of urgency, a shift from the relative ease of summer to the serious business of winter preparation. Your daily journeys to the high fells have ended. The risk of a sudden early snowstorm is too great, and the nutritional value of the upland grasses is declining. The goats are now kept closer to home, grazing in the lowland meadows that have been growing untouched all summer. But this is a temporary solution. These fields must soon be harvested for hay, the critical winter fodder that will keep the animals alive when the world is covered in snow. Every day is now a race against the coming cold. Your tasks shift accordingly. Instead of the long, solitary walks, your days are now filled with communal labor. You join your family in the meadows, armed with a short-handled scythe. The work of mowing is rhythmic and strenuous, a sweeping motion of the arms and torso that you repeat for hours on end. The cut grass is left to dry in the sun for a few days, then raked into loose piles, and finally gathered and transported to be stored in a small dedicated hayrick or in the rafters of the animal barn. Every single blade of grass feels precious, a unit of energy that will sustain a life through the dark months. You also help with the less pleasant but equally vital task of mending the animal shelters. The winter storms here are brutal, with fierce winds and heavy snows. The byre where the goats and cattle will spend most of the winter must be made weatherproof. You help patch the turf roof, replacing sections that have crumbled and stuffing fresh moss into the gaps. You reinforce the wattle and daub walls, mixing clay, straw, and manure into a thick plaster to seal any cracks that might let in the wind. It's messy, smelly work, but the thought of the animals warm and safe inside while a blizzard rages is a powerful motivator. Amidst all this physical labor, there is a heavier, more somber task that falls partly on your shoulders. It is a task of calculation and hard choices. You stand by the goat pen with your father, observing the flock with a critical eye. You cannot afford to feed the entire herd through the winter. The hay you've so painstakingly gathered is a finite resource. To ensure the survival of the strongest and most productive animals, some must be culled. This is the harsh reality of animal husbandry in a subsistence economy. It's a moment of cold, clear-eyed accounting that overrides any sentimental attachment. You, who know each goat by name and personality, must now participate in deciding their fate. You assess them with a practical mind. Old Frida, the matriarch you milked every morning. She is getting old. Her milk production is declining, and she may not survive a harsh winter. The troublesome young Loki? He is strong and healthy, but he has a bad temperament and is a constant nuisance. Several of the young males born this year are now redundant. You only need 1 or 2 good bucks for breeding. The conversation with your father is quiet and grim. "This one," he says, pointing with his chin. "His legs are strong. He'll make a good breeder." You nod in agreement. "And that one," you might counter, pointing to a different goat. "Her mother was a good milker, and she has the same build. We should keep her." You go through the herd one by one, weighing their future value against the cost of their winter feed. Historians examining animal bone assemblages at Viking sites can pinpoint this autumn cull. There's a distinct spike in the remains of juvenile and elderly animals, a clear archaeological signature of this seasonal strategic decision. It's a heart-wrenching process. These are not just abstract livestock. They are creatures you have tended to, cared for, and lived alongside all year. But you understand the necessity. This cull is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. The goats selected will provide the last fresh meat your family will eat for many months. Their flesh will be smoked, salted, or dried to create a vital supply of preserved protein for the winter. Their hides will be tanned to make clothing, shoes, and pouches. Their bones and horns will be carved into tools and ornaments, like the flute you play or the spoons you eat with. Nothing will be wasted. It is a sacrifice that honors the animal by using every part of it to sustain the family. This moment is a stark reminder of the thin line between life and death, plenty and starvation. It's a quiet, personal tragedy that is also an essential act of stewardship. You give a final, lingering scratch behind the ears of a goat you know will be gone by week's end, a silent acknowledgement of its contribution to your family's continued existence. The air is cold, the work is hard, and the choices are harder. Winter is coming. One morning, you awake to a world transformed. The familiar sounds of the longhouse are muffled, and the sliver of light from the smoke hole seems different, softer, purer. When you push open the heavy door, you understand why. The world has turned white. The first significant snowfall of the year has arrived overnight, a thick, sound-dampening blanket that covers the ground, the roofs, and the branches of the pines. The air is still and cold, each breath pluming in front of your face like a ghost. The frantic energy of autumn is over. The long, quiet season has begun. This first deep snow changes everything. Your world, which for months has been defined by the expansive fells and green pastures, now shrinks to the immediate vicinity of the longhouse and its outbuildings. The paths you walked are gone, buried. Travel becomes difficult and dangerous. Your family is now largely confined to your farmstead, an isolated island in a sea of white. Your duties as a goatherd are transformed as well. The flock is now permanently quartered in the byre, the sturdy animal shelter you helped repair. Your morning routine no longer involves a stool and a pail in an open pen, but a trip to the semi-dark, earthy-smelling interior of the barn. The air inside is warm and thick with the combined body heat of the animals and the smell of hay and manure. You move among them, their breath steaming in the faint light filtering through the small openings. Your main task now is rationing. You are the guardian of the hay, the precious resource your family worked so hard to gather. Each day, you fork down a carefully measured amount from the loft, distributing it among the goats and the cow. You give them just enough to keep them healthy, but not a wisp more. To supplement their diet, you might give them bundles of dried leaves or cuttings from certain trees, like ash or elm, that were gathered in the late summer for this very purpose. This practice of using tree hay is a quirky but important detail of Norse farming, a way to stretch the winter fodder even further. You also have to ensure they have water, which means breaking the ice in the trough each morning or carrying buckets from the well. Life for you and your family moves almost entirely indoors. The longhouse, which in summer could feel crowded and stuffy, now becomes a sanctuary of warmth and light. The long fire in the central hearth is never allowed to die. It is the heart of the home, the source of all heat, light, and cooked food. The family's activities draw inward, clustering around its life-giving glow. The pace of life slows down, but it does not stop. Winter is not a time of hibernation, but a season for a different kind of work. The indoor crafts and maintenance that were neglected during the busy summer and autumn months. The rhythmic thump-thump of your mother's loom becomes a constant, comforting sound in the background as she weaves the wool that was sheared in the spring into cloth for new tunics and blankets. The air is filled with the smell of lanolin and the gentle sounds of domestic industry. You have your own winter tasks. You might spend hours combing and preparing wool for the weavers, a tedious but necessary job. There are always tools that need mending, a wooden handle that needs replacing, a leather strap that is frayed. The survival of your family depends on the readiness of your equipment when spring finally arrives. The confinement can be challenging. The smoke from the fire is thicker and more constant, and scholars who have analyzed the skeletons from this period often find evidence of lung ailments, likely exacerbated by spending months in these enclosed, smoky environments. Tempers can fray in the close quarters. The same family members you shared stories with in the evening can become intensely irritating after weeks of unrelenting proximity. A bit of Norse-era cabin fever is inevitable. Little squabbles can erupt over small things, a misplaced tool, a snoring relative. Who gets to sit closest to the fire? Learning to manage these small conflicts, to live together with patience and tolerance, is a critical winter survival skill. But there is also a deep sense of peace and security in this enforced stillness. You look out the door at the swirling snow, driven by a wind that howls around the corners of the longhouse. You feel the solid timber walls around you, feel the warmth of the fire on your skin, and you are safe. The hard work of the past seasons has paid off. You have food, you have shelter, and you have your family. In the deep quiet of the snow-covered world, you listen to the steady rhythm of the loom, the crackle of the fire, and the gentle, contented chewing of the goats in the barn. It is the sound of survival. One evening, as a particularly fierce blizzard rages outside, piling snow against the doors and making the whole longhouse feel like a ship battling a stormy sea, a special visitor arrives. The pounding on the door is almost lost in the howl of the wind, but your father hears it and unbars the entrance. A figure stumbles in, cloaked in snow, bringing a blast of frigid air into the warm hall. It is a skald, a traveling poet and storyteller seeking shelter from the storm. This is an event of major significance. A skald is a highly respected and welcome guest, a professional artist in a world where art is a vital part of life. He is more than just an entertainer. He is a historian, a genealogist, and a carrier of the great myths and heroic legends that bind your culture together. To host a skald is an honor, and your family bustles to make him welcome. He is given the seat of honor closest to the fire, a bowl of hot stew, and a horn of the good ale saved for special occasions. Once he is warmed and fed, an expectant hush falls over the longhouse. The weaving stops, the mending is set aside, and even the children seem to sense the importance of the moment. The skald is not just going to tell a story, he is going to perform. His instrument is his voice, and perhaps a small harp or lyre that he cradles in his lap. His face, illuminated by the fire, is expressive and mobile. He begins not with a simple folk tale, but with a true saga. Tonight he is chosen to recite a portion of the Volsunga saga, the epic story of the hero Sigurd, the dragon Fafnir, and the cursed ring of Andvari. This is not a bedtime story for children. It is a complex, sprawling narrative filled with betrayal, magic, bloody battles, and profound tragedy. It is the Norse equivalent of the Iliad or Beowulf, a foundational story of your people. His performance is mesmerizing. He does not simply narrate, he chants the verse in a rhythmic, hypnotic cadence, his voice rising and falling with the drama of the tale. The poetry is dense and complex, with intricate kennings, poetic compound metaphors, like calling the sea a whale road, or a battle a storm of swords, and alliteration. It's a highly sophisticated art form, and you and your family are a sophisticated audience. You understand the conventions, you appreciate the cleverness of the wordplay, and you know the stories well enough to savor this particular skald's unique interpretation. He tells of Sigurd tasting the dragon's heart and suddenly understanding the language of birds, a quirky, almost fairy tale-like detail embedded in a grim and heroic epic. He describes the glint of Fafnir's golden hoard, painting a picture of unimaginable wealth that makes everyone in the longhouse, with their meager worldly possessions, lean forward in fascination. He powerfully evokes the sorrow of the shield maiden Brynhild, trapped by fate and her own fierce pride. You are completely transported. The wind rattling the roof of the longhouse becomes the sound of the dragon's death throes. The flickering firelight becomes the glitter of the cursed gold. For a few hours, you are not a goatherd in a snowbound hut. You are a witness to the great events of a heroic age. This is the primary function of the skald, to make the past present, to make history and myth immediate and emotionally resonant. The line between the two is blurry. The sagas often concern legendary figures who may have been based on real historical ancestors. Are you listening to history, or are you listening to myth? For the skald and his audience, the question is irrelevant. The story is what matters. It explains the world, it provides models of heroic behavior and unheroic behavior, and it reinforces a shared cultural identity. The scholarly debate around the sagas is immense. They were passed down orally for centuries, just like this, before being written down by Christian scholars in Iceland, long after the Viking Age had ended. How much did they change in the telling? How much did the Christian scribes alter the pagan stories to fit their own worldview? We can never know for sure. What we have are these written versions, a faint echo of the powerful, living performances that once filled longhouses on winter nights. The skald's performance might last for hours, holding everyone in the room in a state of rapt attention. When he finally falls silent, the only sound is the crackling of the fire and the unabated howling of the wind. The spell is broken. People stir, sighing, slowly returning from the world of heroes to their own reality. Your father refills the skald's horn with ale. The performance is not free, of course. The skald will be rewarded for his art. He may be given a new cloak, a silver arm ring if the host is a wealthy chieftain, or in your case perhaps, a block of well-aged cheese, a fine whetstone like the one you traded for, and shelter and food for as long as the storm lasts. It is a more than fair exchange. He has brought the whole world of gods and heroes into your snowbound home, nourishing your minds and spirits as surely as the stew nourished your bodies. The memory of his voice, and his story will echo in your mind for the rest of the long winter. The skald departs once the storm breaks, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than before. The epic tales of heroes and dragons fade, and the quiet, practical realities of deep winter reassert themselves. The days, though slowly, imperceptibly beginning to lengthen, are still short and dominated by a low, gray light. This is the heart of winter, a time for introspection and the small, patient tasks that keep hands and minds occupied. Your world is reduced to the essentials: warmth, food, and the maintenance of the tools that sustain you. This is the season you turn your attention to your own gear. The soft leather shoes that carried you so faithfully up the mountains and down again are worn thin in the soles. The stitching, made from tough animal sinew, has begun to fray in places. Replacing them is not a matter of a quick trip to the store. It is a project you must undertake yourself. You have a few pieces of tanned goat hide saved from the autumn cull, smoke-cured to a soft, pliable consistency. You also have a precious iron needle, a valuable tool, and a length of sinew that has been dried and split into a strong, waxy thread. You sit on the bench by the fire, using your old shoe as a pattern. You carefully cut the new pieces with your sharp knife, wasting as little of the precious leather as possible. This is a skill you have learned through observation and practice, watching your mother and father, and honing your technique through trial and error. The stitching is slow, methodical work. You use an awl, a pointed tool made of bone or iron, to punch holes in the tough leather before pushing the needle through. Your fingers, though calloused, ache with the effort of pulling each stitch tight. It's a quiet, repetitive task that requires focus and patience. As you work, you might be sitting next to your brother, who is meticulously sharpening every knife and axe the family owns on the new whetstone, his movements creating a rhythmic, scraping sound. Across the hearth, your sister could be using a drop spindle, a simple weighted stick to twist raw wool into yarn, her hands a blur of practiced motion. The longhouse is a quiet workshop, each person absorbed in their own small but essential contribution to the family's well-being. This is also a time for weaving, not on the large, upright loom your mother commands, but on a smaller, more personal scale. You might spend a few days creating a new belt or a decorative band for your tunic, using a technique called tablet weaving. This is a fascinating and ancient craft, where a set of small, square tablets, usually made of wood or bone with holes in the corners, are used to create complex and colorful patterns. By threading different colored yarns through the holes and turning the tablets in sequence, you can produce incredibly strong, intricate bands. Archaeologists have found these tablets and the beautiful woven bands they produced in Viking graves, a testament to their popularity and the skill of the weavers. It's a craft that is both mathematical and artistic, a way to create a small piece of beauty and personal expression in a world that is often plain and functional. One of the more mundane but critical winter tasks is simply keeping the oil lamps filled. The fire provides general light, but for close-up work, like stitching or carving, you need a better light source. Your lamps are simple, hollowed-out stones or clay dishes filled with fish oil or animal fat, with a wick made of moss or twisted cloth. The light they give off is smoky, smelly, and dim by modern standards, but it's a precious resource that allows work to continue after the sun has set. This constant battle against the darkness is a defining feature of life in the North. As you sit there, mending your shoes, you are participating in a cycle of self-sufficiency that is almost unimaginable today. You are not a consumer. You are a creator and a maintainer. The things you own are not disposable. They are the result of your own labor or the labor of your family, made from materials you have harvested and processed yourself. This gives you a profound connection to your material world. You understand the life story of every object you use, from the goat that provided the leather for your shoes, to the sheep that grew the wool for your tunic, to the tree that gave the wood for your spoon. There is no separation between the user and the maker. In the deep, quiet heart of winter, this patient, hands-on work is not a chore. It is the very essence of a sustainable, resilient life. As the deep winter begins to loosen its grip, a subtle anticipation builds in the longhouse. The occasion is Yule, the great midwinter festival. It's not a single day of celebration, but a period of feasting and ritual that marks the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, and coaxes the sun to begin its slow journey back to the world. It is the most important festival of the year, a beacon of light and warmth in the darkest season. Preparations begin days in advance. The longhouse is given a thorough cleaning. Fresh rushes are spread on the floor, and branches of evergreen, pine, fir, and juniper are brought inside to decorate the hall. Their greenness is a symbol of life and perseverance in the dead of winter, and their sharp, clean scent helps to cut through the smoky air. The focus of the celebration is food and drink. This is when the true luxuries are brought out from storage. A special Yule ale, brewed months ago and left to mature, is tapped. It is darker, sweeter, and significantly stronger than the weak ale of daily life. Mead, the legendary fermented honey wine, might also make an appearance if the family has had a good year. The smells wafting from the hearth are richer and more complex than usual. A side of pork, carefully preserved since the autumn cull, might be roasted over the fire. A special Yule bread is baked, often in the shape of a boar or a sunwheel, enriched with dried berries and precious honey. This is a time of deliberate, joyful abundance, a defiant feast in the face of winter's scarcity. On the main night of the feast, your entire extended family gathers. The atmosphere is boisterous and joyful. The air is filled with the sound of laughter and loud talk as horns of ale and mead are passed around. You eat until you are stuffed, savoring the rare taste of roasted meat and sweet bread. This is not just about filling your belly. It is a ritual act of hope, a demonstration of faith that the stores will last until spring and that the coming year will be a prosperous one. Beyond the feasting and drinking, Yule is also a time for more personal and spiritual observances. These are not grand public ceremonies, but small, quiet rituals performed by the family. Your father might lead the tradition of the Yule log. A massive log, often from an ash tree, is brought into the longhouse and set ablaze in the long fire. It is meant to burn throughout the festival, its light and heat a powerful magic to strengthen the returning sun. A piece of the log will be saved and kept all year to be used to light next year's Yule log, creating a continuous link from one year to the next. There is also the practice of making oaths. As the evening deepens and the fire burns bright, your father might raise his drinking horn and swear a solemn oath to be a good leader to his family, to clear a new field for pasture in the coming year. Others might follow suit. These are not idle boasts. a Yule oath, sworn over a sacred drink, or a sonargalter, a consecrated boar, is considered magically binding. To break such an oath would bring immense dishonor and bad luck. It's a way of setting intentions for the new year, of turning hope into a solemn promise. You might participate in smaller, more private superstitions. You might leave a bowl of porridge outside the door as an offering for the tomte or nisse, the household spirit who is believed to look after the farmstead. Keeping this guardian happy is essential for the prosperity of the farm. If he's respected, he helps things run smoothly. If he's insulted, he can cause mischief, making milk go sour or tools disappear. Scholars see these household spirits as a personification of the farm's luck or soul, a folk belief that encouraged good stewardship and respect for one's home and land. You look around the firelit hall at your family, their faces flushed with warmth and ale, their voices joined in a festive song. You feel a profound sense of connection to your kin, to your traditions, and to the great cycle of the seasons. The world outside is still dark and frozen, but inside this long house there is light, warmth, and hope. The Yule feast is a powerful affirmation of life in the midst of darkness. It is a promise you all make to each other and to the world. You have survived the worst of the winter, and you are ready to welcome the sun's return. The days will now start to grow longer. Spring will come. The glow of the Yule feast fades, and the winter settles into its final, deepest phase. The days are lengthening, a fact you can measure by the slow creep of sunlight across the longhouse floor. But this new light is thin and brings no warmth. This is often the coldest, hardest part of the year. The initial excitement of the first snow is long gone. The festive cheer of midwinter has passed, and what remains is a long, patient endurance test. The hay pile in the barn, once a proud bastion against the season, now looks worryingly small. Every forkful you distribute to the goats feels like a critical decision. This is the bottleneck of the year, the point where the careful planning and hard work of the previous seasons meet their ultimate test. You find yourself watching the sky, reading the clouds, feeling the air for any sign of a shift. And then, one afternoon, you hear it, a sound you haven't heard in months, the soft, persistent drip, drip, drip of melting snow from the edge of the turf roof. It's a tiny sound, almost insignificant, but to your winter-tuned ears, it is a symphony. You go to the door and look out. The world is still overwhelmingly white, but the unrelenting grip of the frost has softened. The snow on the south-facing side of the great boulder in the yard has begun to recede, exposing a patch of dark, damp rock. The air no longer feels like it is biting your skin. It is just cold, a simple fact rather than an active assault. It is the first thaw. The change accelerates over the coming days. The dripping becomes a steady trickle. The snowpack shrinks, becoming heavy and wet, revealing patches of muddy, straw-colored grass beneath. The world smells different too. The clean, sterile scent of deep winter is replaced by the rich, fertile smell of damp earth reawakening. It is the smell of life returning. You lead the goats out of the byre for the first time in weeks, letting them stretch their legs in the muddy yard. They are as relieved as you are, kicking up their heels and bleating with a renewed energy, cautiously nibbling at the first exposed shoots of green. But the true sign of spring's arrival, the undeniable confirmation that the cycle of life has turned, comes one morning in the relative warmth of the animal shelter. One of the ewes you carefully selected to keep through the winter has given birth. You find her in a quiet corner, diligently licking her newborn kid clean. The baby is a tiny, fragile thing, all knobby knees and oversized ears, its dark coat still damp. It shivers, but within minutes it is struggling to its feet, making clumsy, wobbling attempts to stand on legs that seem far too thin to support it. This is a moment of immense importance. The spring birthing season was the engine of the Norse agricultural economy, but it was also fraught with peril. Archaeologists and historians debate the exact success rates, but it's clear that both mothers and newborns faced high mortality from complications, late frosts, or malnutrition after a hard winter. A healthy birth is a victory. You watch as the kid, guided by instinct, finds its mother's teat and begins to nurse. Its tiny tail gives a frantic, happy wiggle. You approach the mother goat quietly, murmuring soft words of reassurance. You might give her a special treat, a handful of precious grain, to help her regain her strength. You check on the kid, your experienced hands gently feeling its limbs. It is strong. Later, you will mark it as your own, perhaps with a small, harmless dab of red ochre on its forehead, or by using your knife to make a specific tiny notch in its ear, a pattern that is the unique signature of your family, an unwritten brand of ownership recognized by all your neighbors. Over the next few weeks, the byre becomes a nursery. More kids are born each day, their playful bleats filling the air. Your duties as a goat herd are now focused on these new lives. You ensure they are nursing properly, you protect them from the cold, and you watch them with a deep sense of satisfaction. Each healthy, energetic kid is a walking, bleeding promise of the future. They represent the milk and cheese of the coming summer, the meat and hides of the next autumn, the continuity of your flock and your family. You stand at the door of the longhouse, looking out at a world that is slowly, surely turning green. The first hardy wildflowers are pushing through the soil. The birds have returned, their songs filling the morning air. You take a deep breath of the cool, damp, earthy-smelling air. The immense tension of winter, the quiet, ever-present anxiety about survival, finally drains away from you, replaced by a profound and peaceful relief. You have made it. The goats have made it. Your family has made it through another year. The long, hard work is about to begin all over again. But today, in this moment of new life and new beginnings, that feels like a blessing, not a burden. And so, your year as a Viking goat herd comes to a gentle close. The tiny, newborn kid stands on wobbly legs, a symbol of the great turning wheel of the seasons, of hardship endured and of life's stubborn, beautiful persistence. The immense, silent mountains that were once your workplace now stand watch over a valley stirring with new life, and the great cold fjord begins to sparkle under a sun that grows stronger with each passing day. All the worry of the long, dark months now feels like a distant memory, a story from another time. The story is over now. The work is done. All that remains is the deep peace of the evening and the promise of rest. Let the images of the greening hills and the gentle sounds of the flock fade into a soft, comfortable background. Feel the warmth of the longhouse fire, even as it becomes the gentle warmth of your own blanket. The rhythm of that ancient life, the steady cadence of milking and walking, of carving and waiting, can now become the steady rhythm of your own breathing. Just a soft, slow breath in and a long, easy breath out. There is nothing left for you to do, nothing to worry about. The goats are safe, the family is fed, and the world is slowly, peacefully turning towards the morning. You can let go now, drifting on that gentle tide of quiet, letting the last echoes of the story carry you down into a deep and truly restful sleep.